Alright guys, Conviction 454 here. In this video, I finally wanted to talk about something called Active Directory users and computers. This may or may not be a short video. I'm not really sure how much exactly I wanted to cover, but without further ado, let's begin. So one of the main reasons why I really wanted to make a video on Active Directory within a VM environment especially is because as an entry-level IT technician, whether you're working help desk or service desk or anything like that, while you may not necessarily be required to actually dig into your server directly a lot of times, there will be certain things that you may be assigned to do within an Active Directory environment. And what I have in front of you now is actually a Windows Server 2016 VM, which you can actually download directly from Microsoft's Windows Evaluation Center. I'll leave a link in the description. And then what you would need to do to actually run this operating system is you would actually need a hypervisor. So the one that I'm choosing for today is VirtualBox. That's actually the only one that I really use. Sometimes I use VMware, but not too often. I find VirtualBox to be much more convenient and easier to learn and master. So within Windows Server 2016, like I just said, as a entry-level technician, they won't really have you digging into things like Server Manager too much or anything like that. But what you'll get upon actually installing the operating system and opening a virtual machine, if you decide to get some hands-on experience yourself, is you'll see of course, a blank desktop. And then what you really want to focus on when you're dealing with Windows Server is actually going to the administrative tools, and you want to just take a look at the tools that you have available. But there's actually some features that we're going to download, specifically Active Directory. I figured I would wait before I actually dig into Active Directory itself and to just show you guys how you would install it from Server Manager. So what you would normally do to install it, yeah, you wouldn't go here. I'm not sure why this is open. Probably because it needs to, configure Windows Server Essentials. Let's see here. I guess we can actually go through with this. Normally, of course, you wouldn't see this because this will usually be set up for you. Company name, will just put something random. And then we'll let that configure. So one of the things that you're obviously really going to need to have in order to have a Active Directory user clientele and everything is you're going to have a domain. So your workstations and your desktops and everything are going to have to be joined to a domain in order to show up as what we call an object in Active Directory. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Okay, so now it's asking for me to create a network administrator account. So we'll just call this my YouTube name. Just type some other random mess, since this isn't really anything that I actually plan on using in an enterprise or anything. It's really just for show, I guess you can say. Alright, we'll let that install. Let me see. Let me go back to Server Manager real quick. So if it'll actually let me do anything. So when you actually get to Server Manager, what you want to do in order to install Active Directory, you want to go to Add Roles and Features. And then what you want to do is you want to go through this wizard here. You want to make sure that you select role-based or feature-based installation. Let's see, this is the server selection. And then you want to go to specifically, you want to select domain services. Let's see here. I believe domain services is what you primarily need in order to actually get Active Directory and start dealing with some objects or some users and groups within the domain itself. The rest of this stuff is kind of optional. Let's see here. But we can install it anyway, I suppose. Certificate services. This is Active Directory can handle all your certificates, including for your web server and stuff like that. So it's not a bad tool to have. Then there's lightweight discovery. and there's DHCP server, DNS. All of this can be configured within an Active Directory environment, and you can actually like install all of this within your VM and test around and play with it just to learn the ins and outs of it. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's all I really need for now. Anything in here? Let's see. Now you can deal with trivial file transfer protocol clients. You can deal with SMTP. You can deal with all sorts of things. IP address management. There's a whole lot in here you can actually play around with. BitLocker drive encryption. There's just a lot that you can actually test around and learn in a VM environment when it comes to Windows Server. And of course, if you're on the job and everything, then you can, if you have a good team and everything, they'll teach you all this stuff as well if you really need it for your job. I know at One Digital, which is the company I work for, they taught me so much within like a 3-month span. It looks like I might actually have to restart the server once all this is done. So we'll go on ahead and install that. It shouldn't take too long. But let's see if that other setup. It says my password cannot contain the server name, the domain name, or okay, that makes sense. In that case, I think I know a password that should work just fine. Oh, it's restarting. Definitely don't want to press any keys to boot to the CD or the DVD once you already have the operating system installed. Otherwise, it's just going to bring you back to the actual installation page. All right, let's see here. Alright guys, so now that we have the operating system back up, the first thing that we're going to need to do before we actually dig into Active Directory a little bit further is we're going to have to actually promote this server to a domain controller. So that's what I'm going to go on ahead and do. So to get here, you would just need to go to here, and then you would need to go down to Active Directory domain services. And domain services will give you this wizard here that'll allow for you to continue with your Active Directory installation as well as setting up the domain controller and everything. So what we're going to do is come up with a name for the domain controller. I'll explain what a domain controller is in a bit. Alright, so just any random name as long as it's separated by a period. Let's see. I believe that might work actually. Let's see. Yep, that works. Okay, so alright, set function level of the new forest and root domain. That's gonna leave that how it is. Specify domain controller capabilities, DNS, global catalog. And it will not just be read only, otherwise we wouldn't be able to do anything. Looks like it's still loading, so we'll wait for that. A delegation for this DNS server can be created because the authority parent zone can be. Yeah, that's an entirely different thing. We'll have to actually go in and create the authoritative parent zone. So I don't think we necessarily have to do this right now. Net BIOS name. It should generate that automatically. Yeah, like I said, this is just a test, so. Database folder, log files, sys volume. Don't need any of that. Let's see. Review options. One or more prerequisites failed. Please fix these issues and clear rerun. Certificate server is installed. That's the only problem. I didn't know that was actually going to get in the way. So now we may actually have to go back and uninstall that feature. I was not aware of that. I just learned something new today. Alright, so wait, am I in the right place? Yeah, certificate authority. Okay. Yeah, I was lost for a second here. There's two completely different widgets for that. Sorry about that, guys. Alright, and that should fix our issue there, and we should be able to promote this server to a domain controller at that point. Yeah, I kind of thought the add and remove were the same widget, but apparently not. I have not digged into Windows Server 2016 in a while. It may actually ask me to reinstall, in fact, or not, sorry, not reinstall, but to restart. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and give this a quick restart. So in regards to my VirtualBox environment right now, I actually have it in scaled mode. This can be turned off, of course, and to do that you would just have to hit the right control button and then C. It'll take you out of scaled mode. So when you get to this press Control Alt Delete screen, instead of actually pressing Control Alt Delete on your keyboard, you would go to Input, Keyboard, Insert Control Alt Delete, and it will let you back in. Wrong password. There we go. And I believe you can go back into scale mode that way as well. Yeah. Just scale mode is just a little better, just so you can see better, and it's also maximized, of course. So, alright, now we go back to Server Manager. And now we should be able to install that domain controller. Let's see. And I still have to finish the post deployment configuration. So this is generally the basis for how an Active Directory users and computers would look like, but like I said, we still need to actually install the, we'll promote the domain controller or the server to a domain controller. So just show you guys how that looks like real quick. Yeah, then we'll have to do all this from scratch, no problem. And like I said before, an entry-level technician would never have to actually do this himself, because usually this will already be configured within your environment. This will all be done by like a system administrator or something. Um, Most of the time you just be able to log into your workstation. How we do it at work actually is we already have a server, or we have like 3 domain controllers. One is read only, and we as technicians would usually just go in and we would choose one of the domain controllers, usually the default one, which would be the first one. If we need to create a user account, we can do that. If we need to create an OU, we can do that. Well, actually, no, we don't have permissions for OUs anymore, or at least for creating groups, OUs, stuff like that, just users. But I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Alright, this says Windows Server 2016 domain controllers have a default for the security setting. They allow cryptography algorithms compatible with Windows NT 4.0. Yeah, all of this really shouldn't be necessary to do what I want to show you guys. But yeah, as you can see, actually configuring a server through Windows Server 2016 and 2019 and beyond, of course, has quite a bit of information. It says this computer is being restarted because Active Directory domain service was installed or removed. Alright, then looks like we're gonna have to restart again for the 3rd time. Sorry about that, guys. But 3rd time is the charm, right? Also, in most environments, you really generally wouldn't have to worry about like joining a computer to a domain. Normally, in a real, I guess you could call it a realistic IT environment, it would just be, like I said, you creating the user account, and the computers will already essentially be under the domain already. Or you may have like an external vendor who joins the computer to the domain. Like for us, that would be CDW. We give them the information, they image the computer as it joins to the domain. You may even have a PowerShell guide dedicated to creating scripts that automatically join computers to the domain. But yeah, as an entry-level technician, a lot of times you really wouldn't have to worry about that. There may be instances where you actually image the computer yourself. I know we did that periodically just in case the script didn't work, and that was also before we really delegated all of that to our vendor, which is CDW. So yeah, this applying computer settings may take a few minutes, so just be patient with that. Alright guys, so I went ahead and started the VM backup, and currently we are in Active Directory users and computers. As you can see, that the domain that we created and the server that we converted into a domain controller has been established, and so now we are going to create a new user. So to do that, you would just right click, go to new user, and we're just gonna make a generic user here. So just call it test user. I try to keep the nomenclature simple. Yeah, by default the password policy is probably going to be kind of long, so I'm trying to keep it to be at least 10 characters, I believe. So, and as you can see here, when you're creating a user, you can change it to where a user must change password at next login. User cannot change their password. Passwords don't expire. Or you can have it to where their account is disabled. Alright, and we have a created user here. So I really wanted to create a user specifically so we can look at a user's properties, because as an entry-level technician you're going to be dealing with a lot of user accounts, and you have to make sure a lot of information is accurate and everything. So here in Active Directory you can control a lot of things that sync with other external sites. Like I'm sure some of you have heard of sites like Workday. Some of you may have different employee portals that these accounts sync to every 24 hours or something like that. So it is important that you have this information correct. Description isn't so important. Most of the time a description isn't going to be tied to any other websites or anything, but office location, telephone number, emails, stuff like that has to be accurate. Otherwise, you may actually get tickets with users complaining about, oh, my email isn't showing up correctly, or it's not working altogether. This email attribute in particular is important because it syncs with things like your SMTP or Exchange server. If this is inaccurate, they may not be able to access their emails at all, and in some cases they may not even be able to log in. Address attributes like this also sync with external websites. Again, like Workday, our company portal with One Digital, we use Dish for that. A lot of this information syncs with the main website that users log into for assistance with all sorts of things, and it also comes with contact information and stuff like that. So it's important to have this configured properly. And honestly, who wants to see a ticket in regards to somebody getting their street address wrong or their name wrong or something like that? You know, you don't really feel like doing tickets like that as a tech. So it's important that you get it right the first time, I guess is what I'm saying. Alright, and this is extremely important as well. This is the information that is very, very important for a user to be able to log into their distributed computer. So this is what you call a UPN, and this is what you call a SAM account name. It's called user login name as well in Active Directory, but I believe username stands for user principal name, and it's essentially what you use to log into your computer. And a SAM account is more of a legacy UPN in some cases. The majority of the time they're going to stay the exact same. So this is under the COEP.PMEDL2467 domain, and so any computer that's joined with this domain is going to have a UPN of this format. Now when you actually log into the user account, 9 times out of 10 you're just going to need to use this, since it's already under the domain, so you don't have to type this full thing out. Oh, it looks like it. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so yeah, just make sure that if you get a ticket in regards to new hire information and somebody needs you to create a new hire account, that the information that goes here is exactly how HR or how the employee themselves would want to use to type in to log into their computer. depending on your company, you may get a lot of tickets in regards to, oh, my user profile name or my username isn't what I want it to be. And so that's where you would want to go to display name. So their UPN is always going to be their legal first name dot last name in most cases. But if they want their name to actually be displayed as something else, then you can change this to, let's say, I mean, this is just a test user, but let's say you wanted it to be displayed as Paul. I don't know, Paul Brown, something like that. And then you click apply. The object is now going to change to say Paul Brown, I believe, if you refresh. Okay, it still says test user. It should say Paul Brown. It may actually, you know what? I think I got that wrong. This isn't mutually exclusive to how it'll show up in AD, but it'll probably display in something like Exchange or Workday, something like that. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Let's say if a user has a nickname and they'd rather be known as or display as their nickname, so you leave this attribute here. Believe the first name and last name is what AD is going to go by, or Active Directory. So let's see what else is crucial in here. In some IT environments, you may have to configure a local path for one of their shared drives, but we don't need to dig too deeply into that. Telephones, and then we have, let's see, organizations, so their title, department, company, all of this stuff can sync with certain websites. Like if your company has a CRM or something like that, then this information will probably sync from Active Directory to that CRM. Let's see, member of, this is all of the groups that they are joined with. So if I wanted to make this user an administrator, I would click add, enter the object name. Let's type administrator. This user account or user is now an administrator as soon as I click apply. Enter a valid network server path using the form. Okay. Yeah, that will probably be something I'll have to configure another time. So yeah, we can just forget that for now. Let's see here. There's a bunch of other default groups in here. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to click that. Yeah, it may not display them here, but if I were to go back to, let's see. Oops. Here, these are all of the security groups that are currently on the computer. So there's, let's see, there's domain guest, there's administrator, there's all sorts of security groups. Now, like I said, it'll definitely depend on your company, the groups that they feel are necessary to have, the groups that they feel are necessary for certain users to be a part of. This could be directly related to what region they're in so that they can access certain assets, certain shared drives, just certain all sorts of things. It's really hard to just explain it here and now. But yeah, so if we go back to, I actually don't recall where I saved that user. But that's okay. If I go to the domain control, well, there it is. But if in the event you ever have issues finding a certain user, you can always go to the actual domain controller itself, go to find, and then you want to type the name. So test, and boom, there's the user. But we actually don't want to go there for now. There's one thing I did want to show you. that may be a little bit more on the advanced end, but it definitely might help depending on your organization. So I want to go to attribute editor. And actually, before I talk about attribute editor, if you go to view, wait, it should be under view. Oh wait, I'm sorry, that's outside of server manager. But if you go to view and then advanced features, unless this is checked, you won't be able to see the attribute editor. So that's why we went ahead and checked it earlier. So now we'll go back to test users, go to attribute editor, and the one thing that I really wanted to show you is proxy addresses. Now, I don't really have a Exchange server set up for this test VM, but if in the event that you do, depending on your organization, it's going to be very, very crucial that you are made aware of how this works and being able to configure an AD account with an Exchange server, especially if they have preferred names. Like let's say if they have their legal name and then they have their preferred name, but they'd rather go by their preferred name in Outlook. So in this particular instance, I'm actually not even sure if it will let me add a string, but I'll go on ahead and try it. So let's say in this particular scenario, you have a user. Let's just say we'll just call this user the test user, of course, since that's what the account's name is. And let's say they're assigned an Outlook license, so they have to use Outlook at their job, and they want to have that email set up, of course. So what you want to do is you want to set that as the primary SMTP. SMTP stands for a simple mail transfer protocol, and it is essentially kind of like a way for you to send email addresses. So how you want to have this set up is you would want to type SMTP colon test user at yourdomain.com. And then add that. Once you add this, they should be able to send emails and probably receive emails as well through Outlook. There may be some instances where you don't even really need this, and it's configured exclusively through the Exchange SMTP settings. But a lot of times on your local or on-prem Active Directory environment, you may have to go in and configure this. It may not even accept it, actually. Let's see. Actually, it did, but it's not really going anywhere because that email doesn't exist. But yeah, that's how you would do that. And then, of course, you can create a group in this current container. So the group name, there's security groups and there's distribution groups. So actually, before I create that group, I'll explain the difference. So in this sense, a distribution group is a group that from an email, let's talk about from an email standpoint. So well, actually, let's not talk about emails. So in this case, a distribution group would be a group that has access to similar assets, but there's an owner to that group, and only the owner can like send and receive certain assets within that group. And a security group is kind of like, okay, this is the group, there's no owner to the group. The owner would be the IT administrator, and the IT administrator controls everything that goes to that group. But in a distribution group, you can essentially delegate ownership to another user. And there's also something in Outlook called a distribution list, and then a shared mailbox that essentially works the same way. So a shared mailbox, everybody has access, but there's no owner. But in a distribution list, you can assign ownership to particular users and then send out emails to certain users if you need to. So that's essentially the difference. In this case, let's see here. To come up with a group name, I don't know. Like I said, this is just a test environment. All right, and there's our security group. So now if we wanted to assign somebody to that group, you would go to properties, members, add, and we'll add the test user. There he is. Click, apply, and now he should be a member of the group if I did that correctly. Yeah, there he is. Okay. Sometimes you gotta double check. But yeah, that's how you would add a user to a group. Um, if you have a PowerShell guy, you may not even actually have to do this manually. You may just be able to go to that script, open the script, run it, and then it'll do all this automatically for you. But that's how you would manually create a user. That's how you would create a group. That's how you would assign SNTP attributes to an AD account. You know, set their password and everything. So actually, I'm wondering if I would be able to log in to this test user account through this VM just to see if it works. Yeah, why not? Let's try it. It may not let me, simply because this is, yeah, because it's not an administrator account, and it may not let me, but we'll try it anyway. All right, gotta get out of scale mode. So other user, that might work. So test user. If I remember the password that I just made. The user's password must be changed. Oh yeah, it's working. Cool. So now we'll change the password to might not work. Didn't match. Okay. That's the current password. Oops, let me see. The username or password is incorrect. Huh. Alright then. As you can see, this can be very tedious. Yeah, some environments actually they won't even have you manually change their password. They'll have the user change their password on their own time. So yeah, while I try and figure this out, yeah, that should be the correct password. And if not, we can just get back into the administrator account. There we go. It says the sign-in method you're trying to use isn't allowed. For more info, contact your network administrator. Hmm. Yeah, I thought so. I think that's because they're not really part of the administrative group. So, yeah. All right, let's just try and get back into the administrator account. Yeah, it can be a bit confusing at first when you do everything yourself in a VM environment, but if you play around with it, you can definitely figure out the ins and outs. And truthfully, I'm still learning quite a bit about how all this works because I'm still pretty much entry level myself, but I have been working with this environment for a little while, particularly with creating user accounts and doing all sorts of things in AD, really, including creating DNS records and stuff like that. I also learned a bit about it in college, also. Uh, let's see here. Probably should have had this configured a while ago. It might have actually mitigated some of the issues we had earlier. Yeah, this security group actually doesn't really have any predefined configurations or anything. So, I mean, technically it's not really set up to give access to this user yet. But, I mean, like I said, it's just a test environment. So, yeah, it's been a while since I've looked through Windows Server 2016. So, I'm kind of just exploring. Uh, yeah. Some of this actually seems a little bit different from what I remember. But yeah, guys, that's essentially the very basics of Active Directory. There's really a lot of positions out there that will just have you doing stuff like what I just showed you. So, creating users, creating groups, maybe creating an objective unit here and there. Um, Really, in most cases, you won't even have to actually install Active Directory yourself like we did. The one thing that you might have to do in your new environment is actually install RSAT tools, which I talked about in my last video. That's how you get access to the Active Directory environment. Um, but what I would definitely suggest doing is, even if your job doesn't really require you to perform a lot of the functions that AD has to offer, that you definitely actually like dig into a lot of the features involved in AD, learn for yourself, and honestly, a lot of the tools in here could probably help you become a system administrator. So that's going beyond entry level. Um, like I said, at some point you may be configuring print servers and making, and you know, you still be doing some of the entry level stuff like security groups and users, but you actually be more so in control of the actual security policies and whatnot, which is very, very crucial in any IT environment. Um, yeah, like I actually, one thing that I have been trying to look for is where you would actually go to configure those policies, but for the life of me, I cannot remember. Like, but like I said, in the majority of roles where you're digging into AD like this, you probably won't be configuring policies anyway, so it's not really all that important, I suppose. Uh, yeah, here's group policy management. Again, as an entry level guy, you really wouldn't be in here too much. But yeah, as you can see, there's a bunch of different tools. I mean, there's print management, there's local security policy. Actually, this might actually be where we need to be. So password policy, there it is. Okay. So it looks like the minimum password length is 7 characters. Password age is 42 days. Minimum password age has to be 1 day. And then password must meet complexity requirements. And then here's the requirements. So all this is pretty much configured for you by default, as you can see, because I didn't go in here and configure any of this. Kerberos policy. If I remember correctly, I believe Kerberos is an authentication platform. It's kind of like a SYN-ACK type of thing when it comes to a client and a server, but that's really all I know about Kerberos. Um, yeah. Sorry, I couldn't tell you more on that. There's firewall. There's public keys. Yeah, all sorts of things in AD. All sorts of things that you can learn. I should really come back here and dig into some of this stuff myself, huh? That'll probably be useful. But yeah, honestly, guys, I think that's pretty much going to be it for this video. As usual, I appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave them in the comments section. Uh, I actually really enjoyed creating this video because it's kind of like a bit of a flashback, maybe not flashback, but a bit of a reminder of where I started, especially in college. I remember learning how to install VMs, learning what a VM is, learning about a hypervisor like VirtualBox, and just digging into Windows Server 2016 for the first time. Uh, yeah, it was very, very foreign to me, of course, but the more you play around with it, the more you'll learn. And honestly, in an actual like enterprise setting, like I said, you probably won't ever actually see this anyway. But it's important that you actually take the time to, learn about this on your own free time, I guess, so that you can, add to your repertoire, add to your skill set. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.